Hi there, Sandra here from Createinspain. I'm starting off my card today with a rather unusual method. I have covered over half of my piece of card here with double-sided sticky tape. I haven't gone completely and utterly mad, and I'm not doing things the wrong way around. I'm hoping to create a rather unique little piece of texture and dimension for my card front. So the first thing we need to do is to take off my backing. Here we are, that's better. And then the final little piece on this corner. Okay, so it's all nice and stiff. These things. Now this is probably a waste product from something else that is cleverly packaged in order to make some profit for the company, whatever company it was. Now I found this in a local Chinese, it's the equivalent of a dollar store basically. And it didn't come in this jar, this was a glitter jar, and I've just put it in here because it's easy to use like this. But what it is bits of iridescent cellophane. Now this stuff, if you've not come across it before and you do any resin stuff, is brilliant in resin. I'll have to show you some resin pieces that have got this in it. But this is what I want the double-sided sticky tape for, because I want to actually sprinkle this on. Now the reason I've chosen to do this with double-sided tape, because it's a plastic and I've tried doing it with glue and it wasn't unduly successful with glue. But double-sided tape should hang on to this pretty easily. What I need now is a piece of vinyl backing. And the bit which is the non-stick side, I'm going to put over the top of here so that I can press my bits into place without everything coming off. Now, had I been sensible, and I did do it earlier when I was sensible, I would have done this on a piece of paper so that I could easily pick up these bits and re-sprinkle. But it's late at night and I forgot to do that, so it's all over my black latex mat, which means it shows up a lot. And so you have this quite pretty little surface, but I'm not going to stop there because I've got some colour pigment powders that I want to use in between ones, which is why I didn't want to cover the entire surface. I've got some pigment powders. Now if you don't have pigment powders, you could use a powdered eyeshadow. There are lots of iridescent ones you can get, or you could go for plain coloured ones. Just choose one you like. I've got two colours here, and I'm going to sprinkle them on in a random fashion. I don't want it to look overly sort of obvious. No real rhyme or reason to the pattern. And you can always add more of this stuff, so it's pretty potent, and you really do not need to add a vast amount of it, but you can add more if you need to. You can't take it away. No chance could you take it away. So I'm just now going to dab my brush, which is a pretty horrible, cheap, tacky, fluffy sort of brush, but ideally suited for doing this. And lo and behold, we have a really lovely colour pattern. Now because I've still got other areas in here which have not got any colour on, I can choose if I want to add more colour. If I've decided that I've really got enough colour in it, what I will do when I've got to that stage is get one of the powders that I've got which doesn't have an awful lot of colour and just go over it with that. This looks absolutely stunning. It's beautiful. There we go. That is my background done well. Now I can brush it with a stiffer brush to remove any loose pieces. So I'm really pleased with the way this has turned out. I thought I would show you a little test swatch if you use a dark card. So I've got a black one here. Put exactly the same cellophane confetti over it. Now, because my double-sided sticky tape that I'm using for this one has actually got a white colour to it when it's applied, what I've done is I've used a black eyeshadow and gone over the gaps with the black eyeshadow. Now, if you want to, you can seal this with a picture sealer. You can use hairspray on it, give it a couple of coats of hairspray if you want, just so that the powders don't come off on anyone's fingers if they touch it. In this particular instance, I've gone over it with a little bit of acrylic gloss. It's not quite dry. But again, that's another way that you can just make sure that nothing is going to come off the surface. Now, I did one the other day where I did the original cellophane edition in a way that it just wouldn't stay on. I tried doing a glue, putting the cellophane on and then adding a powder, and for some strange reason it just didn't really want to hang on to the cellophane. And as I was brushing on the powder, the cellophane bits were popping off. So I shook off most of it and then reapplied it. And I've put a piece of book covering film over the top because there was no way that stuff was actually going to stay there. It creates a good look and I'm quite happy with the end result on the card, but I do prefer the one that I just showed you, this one here. This is the design that I'm doing for the card front. Now, in the file there is an alternative, but the alternative means that you do need to cover all of your page with whatever you're going to use for your background. So I've cut it out here. Now, the way I've done this is I've actually embossed the shapes on my cutting machine and then I've done the cut on the outside. Now, what I do is I put a piece of craft foam underneath my watercolour paper. I do the embossing and then I lessen the pressure on the cut, i.e. on my Brother Scanning cut I do a half cut. If you're using another cutter, you just take your pressure down considerably so that it only cuts through this and it doesn't cut through the foam behind it. And then you can do it all without moving anything. So I need to do some painting on this. And for that I decided to use watercolour pens. Now, while on the subject of watercolour pens, you don't have to have proper watercolour brush pens if you don't want to. If you look for washable children's markers in whatever nib type you like, that will work equally well because they are water-based. They are designed to dissolve in water in the same way that watercolour brush pens are. So you could just as easily use cheap children's felt tips as purchased ones deliberately for the craft world. I have noticed even that Carioca, which is an Italian brand that we get a lot of in Spain, are selling brush tip pens. And some of them, maybe they've been watching my videos, have actually been filled with food colouring apparently, because they say non-toxic, filled with food dye. They do two different sorts and I haven't got any to know the differences between the two of them, but I might pick some up. I think the nibs are slightly different. I might pick some up at some point and test them out. They are very reasonably priced. They're not going to break the bank and you can use them for normal colouring in, you can use them for watercolour blending, whatever. It doesn't make much difference. I've got a range of colours and because of the colour that I've done this, I am going to go for pinks, blues, purples. The first thing I'm going to do is actually do the centres because that gives you some kind of depth of colour guide, if you like. Because sometimes if you do the centres afterwards, you suddenly think everything else is the wrong colour. Now I'm using two, and I use the paler one first and then go in with the darker one. And all I'm going to do is just squiggle. No particular rhyme or reason to this. I want a few little white bits left, and I don't like to fill flower centres up with black because it tends to kill the painting. That's a bit too stark. And go in with some darker. I'm not doing sort of straightforward round edges, nothing like that, just squiggly bits. And before you ask, I have no idea what sort of flowers these are. These are just made up in my head. Gardening is not one of my strong points. It's quite funny, my husband went to the dentist yesterday. He had a crown come off and he made an appointment to go see the dentist. And they've never done it before, and maybe it's got something to do with Easter, I don't know, but they gave him a little pot plant as a gift. I thought, this is rather strange. And he said, the idea is you go on Facebook and you take a picture of your pot plant, presumably when it's in flower. It's not in flower yet. And the best picture will win, I don't know, a free teeth clean or something, or I forget what the prize was. I just thought that was so funny. He said, yesterday, he said, I've just given it some water. He said, I know you're, a bit sort of deadly to pot plants. Yep, that's me. I'm deadly to pot plants, most definitely. Yeah, I just thought it was so funny that the dentist is giving you free plants. And let's see, that's a nice deep colour. It's a little bit stronger one here. Now I'm not doing all the petals. What I'm doing is some of the petals and leaving gaps. If you do it with all the petals in one go, what you're going to do is end up with a mess. So then you go in with your water and you just blend your colours as you wish. Now this is a really, really easy way of doing watercolour if you're not that way inclined, and if you don't want to faff around with palettes and things like that. This is a great way of working with watercolour. I just like the magic when you add water to the colour and everything starts to blend, and it will continue to blend until the paper is dry. I'm going to do a different colour, I think. For this one I'm going to go just around the centre with the darker colour. And pull the colour out. In fact, I want a deeper blue as well. And I'll put the deeper blue close to the centre of the flower. And this is a real cheats way of doing it without doing any great work at all. And now all I have to do is take that colour and put it to the petals. Again, make sure you're doing alternate petals because you don't want it all to flood, and for you not to have separate petals at the end of the day. You do want them to be separate. This is the finished painted article, and this is my background, so this is going to be stuck on top of this. Now I'm not going to stick it at the moment because this has only just been painted and it's still damp, and although you might think it's dry, it's not going to be dry just yet. Here is the other design that I did at the same time, so it is very similar but a little bit different at the same time. Almost looks like embroidery. Now I've cut this out of a white cardstock. It's only a very thin cardstock, but I have backed it with a transparent vellum. And the reason I've put it with transparent vellum is because I want to use this background. Now, as you can see, it's an inked background. It's done on photo paper, and I've also added some little speckles of silver leaf. And so the idea with this one is that you can choose where to put it, whether you want to centre it like so, whether you want to skew it that way, whichever way you want to use it, because being a free floating piece, you can do what you like with it. If you wanted to, you could even colour this with alcohol markers, but I just like the fact that this background is the star of the show. So here we have 3 different cards from pretty much the same design, and I think they're all very nice. I do like the effect that this gives. I think this is really good fun. The yellow for me is a different sort of colour scheme. I tend to go more with this type of colour. And I think this one looks really pretty as well, with all the little silver detail in the background on the alcohol ink. So I hope you've enjoyed those, and I hope you give the file a go, and I'll see you again soon. Take care now.